London Islamic Research Academy. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome to our live show. So, sports are very important in Islam. We all know Muhammad Ali, who's the legendary boxer, and he died a few years ago. And when people were asked like what they thought about him, they said he made it cool to be a Muslim. And before he was famous, people were like bullied for their faiths. So this shows that we can make a difference with like sports. And with the world in the state it is now, we need to show the people that Muslims are not only good at praying and stuff like that. We can also do sports and we can like compete competitively, I guess. So in today's live show, we're going to be talking about sports that we enjoy, and of course the importance of sports in Islam. Today we're joined by Uzair. So assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So how are you today?
Yeah, very good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm okay, alhamdulillah. How's your lockdown been?
Yeah, not too bad, alhamdulillah. I've been, keeping active, both, physically and mentally. Alhamdulillah, it's been good. I just got off a call with Swansea University. They were doing a meeting with Hillary Clinton, who's one of the patrons here, and we were just talking about how to improve the situations for people like me and you, students, during and after lockdown. So it was quite interesting to hear from her.
Very good. Very cool. And today we're also joined by another guest, a surprise guest, which is Sinan. Assalamu alaikum, Sinan.
Assalamu alaikum.
So Sinan today is going to be reciting some Quran for us, and yes, some verses with translation. And okay, Sinan, go ahead.
Jazakallah khair. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحرموا طيبات ما أحل الله لكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين وكلوا مما رزقكم الله حلالا طيبات واتقوا الله الذي أنتم به مؤمنون. In the name of Allah, who is most kind and most merciful. Believers, don't declare unlawful healthy foods made lawful by Allah, and don't go beyond the limits set by Allah. Allah dislikes those who go beyond the limits. Eat the lawful and healthy food that He has provided you, and be mindful of Allah who you believe. Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 87-88. وأطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول واحذروا فإن توليتم فاعلموا أنما على رسولنا البلاغ المبين. Obey Allah and Messenger, and beware if you turn away, that will be bad. You know our Messenger is to deliver the message clearly. صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
MashaAllah, Sinan, that was a very nice recitation, and I hope you can come again next live show and recite some more. You got very nice voice and good verses as well. So from these verses, what do we learn? We learn a few main points. The number one is that our lifestyle has to be balanced, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a lifestyle that's balanced, not one where you go into excess or you don't do anything. You need to keep like a balance between everything. And the second is you have to eat, drink like lawful and halal items, and you have to avoid the unlawful haram food and drink. And if you do that and obey Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's instructions and teachings, and you follow the Quran, all that, then you will have like a very nice and like healthy life, and it'll be really good. So that was a very nice verse, and yeah, thanks for reciting it. So Sinan, what's your favorite sport?
My favorite sport's football.
So why do you like football?
It's good for your feet, your muscles, and it's good for your agility as goal.
Okay, very nice. So, Uzair, what is your favorite sport?
I like most sports actually, but the one I play regularly, but obviously less regularly now. But the one I usually like to play is football. I actually play for a team locally, and we play against teams from all over Wales, which is where I live. But yeah, I like it because it doesn't only just train you physically, but it also trains you mentally. So you have to be constantly aware, constantly cohesive with the rest of your team. You have to learn tactics, assess how your opponent's playing. So it's as much an exercise for your brain as it is for your own body and pushing your limits in every sort of way you can.
So you would say that it's not just the strength and like the physical aspect of it, but it's also very like a tactical game.
Yeah, even if say even the mental will aspect, you're playing for 90 minutes and it's a high intensity game. You're running around a pitch. Sometimes you're doing stuff which you might seem there's no point to, like running around trying to lose your man or whatever. So it's really taxing physically. So you have to also build up that strength of will to keep going for 90 minutes or however long it is that you play for. So as well as thinking about how you can score, how you can create space and whatever, pick the perfect pass at the right moment, you also have to keep egging yourself on to keep going, get that ball, keep running, make that tackle. So it's physically and mentally challenging.
Yes, I agree. Because I used to play rugby when I was younger, and a lot of the time it would just be chasing after the ball.
Yeah, rugby is amazing. Yeah, it's exactly the same.
I enjoy rugby. It was pretty good, but I wasn't that good at running, so it wasn't really fun to be running for so long. So yeah. So, are there any sports that you want to try in the future?
I've always been a fan of tennis. So one of my favorite tennis players ever was Pete Sampras when he used to play, which is more of an individual sport. Because I do football, I do occasionally play rugby with my mates, which is a very heavily team sport. So you have to work a lot with other people. But an individual sport like tennis, for example, you have to play for hours and hours sometimes. And it's really, really physically tasking. Like if you see some tennis players who are the top of their game, completely, it's not even just physically fit. They can go for ages and ages and ages and not lose any sort of intensity or any sort of proficiency in their game, which I really, really admire.
Yes, definitely. I actually I play badminton on Wednesdays, right? And the people next to us were having like a national tennis championship or something like that. And then they were playing and like I couldn't even see the ball. They were just like smash and then the ball just disappears. And the other guy like dives for it and then bang, the ball just disappears again. So I don't know how they can like register it that quickly.
Again, that tests your mental ability, your ability to react in time to your opponent, because it's all in real time, but you have to be 5 steps ahead just to win that point. So it's very hard, challenging.
Yeah, definitely. So similar to tennis, actually, one of the sports that I do is badminton, right? And I enjoy badminton because the thing with badminton is that as opposed to tennis, where it's really like swings. You have to like swing your arm quite a lot. And also when I play tennis, I like make contact with the ball, and then the ball just goes flying. Like I can never figure out how to like get the ball to just go over the net. So I prefer badminton because it's a lot more like wrist oriented, a lot more like a flick motion where you get the power from, and badminton is pretty fun. But honestly, one of my favorite sport right now is probably karate because I love like the history behind it, and we have the kata, the forms.
Yeah.
We have to learn them, and then after you learn them, you learn like the applications, and it's like interesting how like one move or two moves can have like 20 different applications. So that's really interesting, and of course, it makes you really strong because you've done kickboxing, right? You know that martial
Yeah,
arts.
I did a bit. My brother's more of the kickboxer, really, but I started off, and then I thought I'd probably just stick to football because it was taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like the fact that it's really, really sort of teaches you discipline because you have to keep at it even if you don't get it at the first try. And the main thing they teach you is you follow exactly, this is the way how to do it. There's a set route, a set sort of way of doing it. There's a set instruction. There's no way of cheating it. You can't do this combination or whatever with a shortcut. You have to do it the same way. Everybody does it the same way, and it also teaches you like respect. So whenever you go into the dojo, you're sort of separated into groups, but there's always that level of respect for not just the people who are above you, who have like a better belt or in a better class than you or older than you, but the respect filters up and down. So I think it's great.
yeah, definitely. So in the future, I want to try wrestling or judo. Have you ever wanted to try wrestling or judo?
Yes, well, apart from like probably in school or we're just outside messing around with friends, just wrestling, which is
Yes.
probably not the right way to do it for competitive wrestling. But yeah, I definitely see how wrestling helps, especially not only just building up your strength and can you overpower your opponent. It's because occasionally you're going to get put in a situation where you're on the bottom, and it's testing your willpower, I suppose, to try and get out of that situation.
Yeah, definitely. Wrestling, when you just like the thing with wrestling, for it to be fun, you don't even need to be like good. If you're just like playing around with one of your friends, like in the
Yeah.
mosque, me and one of my friends were just like, "Hey, let's wrestle," and then we did like 2 rounds, and I won both of them. But anyway, but yeah, I want to try one of those, and yeah. Did you know?
That's what I think. That's what I think is good about wrestling, because you don't have to be the biggest guy. You don't have to be stronger necessarily. You just have to be more technically gifted. So you have to be smarter in a sense than your opponent. And most of the best wrestlers you can, if you watch wrestling, most of the best wrestlers use their opponent's weight or their opponent's shortcomings against them. It's not really, I'm stronger than you, I'm going to beat you sort of attitude.
A lot of I've heard a lot of like really high level like wrestlers and like Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys and stuff saying that when it comes to it at like the very highest levels of grappling like tournaments, that it's almost entirely like a mental game and strength just doesn't like come into it, because when you're like at such a high level, you're all going to be strong. There's no getting around that. Your opponent is going to be strong always. So the only way you can really beat them is through like how mentally prepared you are, I guess.
Yeah, that's for every sport really. Our coach always says it's not about, at this point, because we're a really good team and we're also playing against really good teams as well. So it's not about whether you're better than them. It's usually about, on the match day itself, it's usually about who wants it more, who wants to win more. It's about the mental game. And sometimes you can tell who has won before they even walk out the dressing room, because they just have that, they're all fired up, or they just have that air about them that they're here to win. And
The
you, as a
determination.
player, yeah, the determination, and if as a player that actually encourages you to always be focused, always be alert, because one moment of weakness, and the guy you're playing against, so the guy in your position who's playing against you, he's going to sense that straight away, and he's going to take advantage of that, and you can't afford that.
Yes. So, did you know that there are actually some Sunnah sports that have been mentioned in the Hadith, and wrestling is one of them. The other two are
Yeah.
horse riding and archery. So that's really interesting. So, have you ever actually wanted to try horse riding or archery?
Yeah, I've done both actually. Because in Wales we have like lots of countryside and whatever, so we always get involved in that sort of thing. So like swimming, surfing, horse riding, archery, that sort of stuff. We always basically it's mandatory. It might as well be mandatory here. So yeah, I've done quite a bit of archery, and then there's lots of hills and farms where you can go out and learn how to ride a horse and things like that. It's great. We have this close on hand.
That's cool. Unfortunately for me, I live in the city, so there aren't that many horses around. But I actually have tried archery before. Archery is one that I've tried before. I went to a like an adventure resort thing, and
it's all about practice.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's nice. The bow is quite like hard to pull back though.
Yeah, we had a demonstration from this. I think they were like scouts or part of the Royal Air Force or something, and they brought in different bows. So they brought in like an Olympic style bow, which had like had couple, I think almost 20 newtons of force that you had to pull it back with, which is quite lax. But they brought in a bow which is like, I think it must have been 600 years old, and nobody could pull it back even an inch. So archery is really good especially if you're talking about the type of archery that the Prophet Muhammad SAW and all them did. They had to be really, really strong to even pull that string back, let alone get the accuracy to make a kill or whatever. So
yeah, definitely. The funny thing about the Olympic bows is I've seen some Olympic bows, right? And they've always got like loads of attachments on them. And it looks less like a bow and more like a laser gun, to be honest.
I think that's more they showed us you can take some of the attachments off. So it depends on obviously the strength and the weight of the person. So they they might add more weight or take more weight up. But also it's just mainly just safety, because usually there's tons of people watching and judges and whatever. So it's just most of those are like safety attachments.
Yeah, understandable, actually. Yeah. So, actually, let's say a story. I've got a very interesting story from the Hadith, which is about wrestling, actually. And there was this guy called Rukana, and he was kind of like an enemy of Islam. He didn't really like Prophet Muhammad SAW because of the message that he was spreading, basically. He didn't like the new faith. So he went up to Prophet Muhammad SAW and he's like, wrestle me, and if you can beat me, then I'll convert to Islam. And this guy was like the champion wrestler of like all of the world that they knew, I guess. He was basically like the best wrestler they had. And the Prophet Muhammad SAW wrestled him and body slammed him. Slammed him into the ground. And according to some narrations, he slammed him 3 times. So yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, it just shows you have to like be, you have to try your best to be as physically fit as you possibly can, especially back then, because Muslims weren't really in the majority back then, so they had to like be prepared to be assaulted or like persecuted, sometimes even like attacked. So
yeah, definitely, yes. It was a much more violent time back then.
Yeah,
I guess it could be argued that it's still quite a violent time.
Yeah,
but that's for another time. That's a topic for another discussion. So actually, your point about like being like strong is also a very relevant point, because in a hadith it says that the strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. So that doesn't just mean in faith, it also means physically. So if you're like some amazing like big sheikh, you got the huge beard going and like you're always in the mosque reading Quran, but you're physically like really weak, then you're not really completing kind of the requirements, I guess, to be close to Allah, right? So you should be both strong in your faith and strong physically, so you can like defend yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because most of the things that Allah has told us to do, like He's made, for example, alcohol and intoxicants haram. That's not just because He doesn't want you to go out partying or whatever. There's a reason for that. It's because it's really damaging to your body. So someone who has a very weak physique, they're not necessarily in sin or whatever. But they should try to aim to better themselves. That's all part of increasing your iman, being closer to the way of the Prophet ﷺ, so the Sunnah, being closer to that.
Yeah, and I guess it could be said that if you're not like physically strong, then how can you fulfill like kind of if you're like extremely weak, then how are you going to like pray Isha namaz in like Jamaat or something? Your legs are gonna like start dying in the second rakat if you don't have any like strength. So, and like if you're going Hajj or Umrah and you have to walk around the Kaaba 7 times, it's not that hard to do. But if you don't have any strength, then how are you gonna do it? So you need to be strong just to fulfill like the basic obligations as well in reality.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Yeah.
So what do you think about injuries in sport? Because I know a lot of parents might not want their children to start something like wrestling or other sports or archery or throwing or anything like that because they think they're going to get an injury. So what do you think? How do you weigh the risks versus kind of the benefits?
For actually not just martial arts or contact sports, but any sort of sport, it's designed to keep you safe. Otherwise, it wouldn't be sport. It would just be,
fighting. It would
be
brawling.
fighting. Yeah, it'd just be random brawling.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, so even something like boxing, there's a set way. There's a certain way you can punch. There's certain times you can punch. There's there's so many rules to restrict concussions, brain damage, or whatever. It still happens, unfortunately, but it's much better now because they have all these sorts of restrictions. You have the referees, you have the judges watching. So I would say any injury that you do sustain in sport is probably like 90% of the time it's going to be your own fault. So I've injured myself so many times playing football, but it's rarely ever been some nasty guy trying to tackle me with a slide tackle. Usually it's because I haven't warmed up properly and I'm running at full speed and suddenly I twist my ankle because I haven't warmed up my ankles properly in the warm up, for example. So as I would say to parents who are worried about that, as long as your child or your kid who's doing the sport is taking it seriously and going through all the steps the coaches is giving, warming up properly and keeping healthy between the exercise, then they should have literally no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, definitely. Even with something like boxing, which is renowned for being like quite intense, I guess.
Yeah.
The thing is with boxing, the chance of injury is actually much lower than it would be. Of course, the referee and stuff, and obviously you can't like beat your opponent when he's knocked out, so that helps a lot. But also, they're wearing like giant pillowcases on their hands, so that's every sport has their own form of like protection. Whether in like kickboxing, you have the helmets, right? In boxing, you got the huge gloves. In any other kind of sport, you'll have some form of protection, like mouth guard or stuff like that. So really, you shouldn't worry about the injuries too much. And even if you injure yourself, like you're gonna grow and you're gonna get stronger. So the injuries you get, it's unless obviously you get some really bad injury, which is not rare, which is not common, is extremely rare because of all the safeguarding, right? But even if you get an injury, you recover from that injury and you'll probably come out of it like stronger than when you went in. So I think you shouldn't really be afraid of injuries.
Yeah, you see a lot of MMA fighters and any sort of martial artists. They do a lot of conditioning, so they
Yeah.
purposely put themselves through a lot of torture and pain just to get their muscles used to that level of impact, or whatever. So there's whatever sort of injury or whatever sort of worries you have being physically hurt, there are tons of measures that you can do to avoid it anyway. So you just have that's based on your own desire, how far you're willing to go with your sport, for example. That's about it.
Yeah, definitely. There was one MMA fighter, I can't remember. He said like he didn't condition his shins enough or something. He kind of like skipped out on that quite a lot. And then when he was in the match, he checked a kick. He checked a kick and then he broke his shin while checking a kick because he didn't condition it enough.
Yeah,
So
they see.
that's kind of like a metaphor for like life, I guess. Because if you just go through life and you face like no hardships, then when something comes around, you're gonna get demolished. So it's better if you like condition yourself to like the world, and you can do that. You can learn how to make yourself stronger through sports, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's like that old, the old saying: if you fail to prepare, then prepare to fail. You have to, with everything in life, and it's not just sports. If you practice, and if you practice those painful, bad scenarios, then when something like that comes, you'll be more prepared for it. It's how your body works. It's basically the slogan for your immune system. That is, astronauts, when they go into space, if you ever listen to a talk from an astronaut like Chris Hadfield, for example, he says, if you're an astronaut, then you have to be a pessimist because you're in an environment where everything is different. Something goes wrong, you could die instantly. So you have to put yourself in that mindset. You have to go put yourself through torture, essentially, to get better and stronger.
You have to kind of get yourself used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
There's no changing it. So very interesting. So thanks for coming on the live show. I think it's about time to end now. So I hope those who are watching have like learned something interesting. Maybe if you are thinking about starting a sport, maybe you've decided that, yes, I'm going to start this now. If you had some worries about injuries, hopefully we've kind of reduced those worries. So thanks for coming on the show. And
thank you for having me.
Yes. So please, like, if you're watching, like, share, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, then subscribe and do all that. And thanks for watching our live show on London Islamic Research Academy. Assalamu alaikum. London Islamic Research Academy.